Estamos en otro capítulo de la Entrevista Educativa, este espacio que hemos creado en Educar Chile para que ustedes puedan tener acceso a ideas, corrientes, autores, personalidades de la educación que de esa manera pueden hacer parte de su trabajo habitual en las aulas, en los colegios, en las universidades. En esta ocasión tenemos la oportunidad de tener un invitado de Suecia, el profesor Erik Amnå de la Universidad de Suecia. Es un cientista político de origen, pero que se ha dedicado por más de 20 años a lo que es educación cívica o educación ciudadana a la ciudadanía, y por lo tanto nos va a relatar cómo es la visión que tienen de la formación cívica y ciudadana de la juventud, así como lo que puede hacer la educación en este dominio. How are you, Erik?
I'm fine, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Erik, what is your vision about the youth in terms of political participation now? Do you think that you have a sort of global crisis in terms of the participation of the youth in the political arena?
Regarding their presence in the traditional institutions, including parties, there is definitely a sort of crisis. They are not attracted by memberships or activities or involvements in the old channels which we are used to rely on in our democracies. So yes, something has to be done in order to recruit and attract young people. And since we are not fond of forcing them or manipulating them, the political parties and other organizations have to establish dialogues with the young people in order to understand them better and reflect them better and represent them better, because as it is now they are underrepresented in our representational democracies. So in the long run, if nothing happens, it will be a gap that can be dangerous between young people and the old democracy.
You think that that is a global movement? That is everywhere you have, or they have some countries that are more affected by this disaffection with
No,
democracy?
I think we can say that it is a global trend. It varies in details. In Sweden, for instance, we have a very good election rate or voting rate among the first-time voters. In other countries, it's much worse. It's much lower than the adult population and the adult voters. But in general, the parties are under big trouble, I would say, and parties and youth branches of the parties and researchers and everyone concerned is looking desperately for new forms and new ways to close the gap.
And why do you think that they have this is a sort of generational sign, the generational differentiation in terms of this disaffection with the political all institutions?
No, I think it's partly a result of successful democratization, which have made the citizens and young people more critical, more aware and more hesitant to step into forms they have not authorized themselves, but maybe their grandmas or their fathers have been very active in. But it doesn't matter now. Today's youth want to be authentic in a way that they can defend their own behavior and their own acting per se and for themselves. They won't rely to how these things were solved decades ago. So I mean, and that's one of the missions of the school, of course, to bring them up partly by developing their critical awareness, critical thinking.
But you think that they have something in the form of organization of the economy, of the work, of the form of life, which is influenced this? What is the connection with the two things?
The connection is partly hard to find a solution of, namely that it goes so fast in very many of the youth other contexts and circumstances, while political life is so slowly going forward. It takes time. There are reflections, there are people that should be heard, and so on. Today's youth want more action and want more immediate response, an immediate result, because they are occupied by very burning issues that really needs to be solved at the best already yesterday, and not within 2 weeks, or when a new legislation can be there. So it's one very, very hard conflict. Another conflict is, of course, that the old leadership styles won't satisfy young people.
Why?
Because it's too authoritarian. It gives no room for deviating viewpoints, for deliberations, and so on. And the young people are, for good reasons, not there to just serve old male chauvinists or all matriarchs or so. They are there to focus on politics, to understand it and to change it. So that's two very robust problems, I would say. And the third one is a question of values. The old parties represent old value clashes and old value conflicts, like the right and left dimension, while the new values we are seeing being emerging is more about other things, like the very popular new scale, contrasting those with green, alternative, liberal values versus those defending traditional, authoritarian and nationalistic values.
Yeah, this is interesting. You think that this division between left and right is something that is
It's on its way out, but all the parties almost in the world are mainly representing us along this old-fashioned line, except for the Greens, of course, and some other. We had a pirate party in Sweden and the European Parliament. They are trying to mirror the new conflict line.
But at the same time, we see some signs in the other direction. No? That is that we see, for example, in Chile and Latin America, some youth people that is engaged in some movement in terms of the change of the climate, or some specific causes that they have enormous demonstration about that.
Yes.
But what is it? Do you think that is?
But what party in Chile will represent them?
Mm-hmm. You think that it's a sort of social activism that is disconnected with the traditional parties?
Yes. So there is one of the major obstacles for young people to get into politics, that the gap between civil society activism and political parties are huge.
You think that this is risky for the democracy?
It is risky for the democracy because it will undermine the legitimacy of the democratic parties. So people may either ignore them or use undemocratic means in order to change society. If they are ignored by the political parties, they may respond by ignoring the political parties.
In our case, for example, it's not only the thing of the political parties, it's also the political institutions.
Yeah.
That is the parliament or this type of institution that is devaluated for young people. That is the same situation in Europe too.
Yes, it is. And of course, it makes it even more difficult, since we know no democracy without strong parliaments, except for Switzerland, for instance.
And do you think that they have a role in the new ways of communication in terms of internet, the mobile phones, and all this communication play a role in this devaluation of democracy and the political
They are doing very, very great things, and they are their activities are so important for for a vibrant democracy, but they are doing it far away from the representative institutions. So there is a lack of of respect, maybe mutual, from the institutional side and from the civil society or youth side. So one of the beauties of the emergence of many democracies was the alliances between trade unions, women's liberation movements, and other broad social movements, and different political parties. But these links seem to be broken nowadays. So in that way you can say that the populists are right when claiming then that political parties in some way have lost their connection to the people.
In your studies, you detect that they have some period of the time that the sort of interests of politics are solidified.
Yeah. There seemed to be a very formative period when the window is open towards politics, say between around 15 years old. And then so many things seem to be formatted in their lives with long-lasting effects throughout their adult life as well. And therefore, of course, the role of the school is extremely important because of that they happen to be present in the schools during these very, very formative years.
Have this period very important in the adolescence and when the teenagers open their views about society, and you say that have a sort of inertia for a long time in their lives. That is an important thing. But in any case, you detect also that they have different attitudes vis-a-vis the political thing.
Sure.
But you have different differences there.
Yeah, earlier research has dichotomized young people in passive and active, and found that a very, very small share actually can be called activists, while the huge rest can be named passive. What we discover is, however, that it's more complex, because you can be seemingly passive in many ways. And we found that there is, besides the few activists, many young people staying unengaged. They have no hard feelings or no negative feelings towards politics, but it's not their cup of tea. So they vote, but else they don't care. They use their freedom to stay passive, as the democracy promises, as we know. And then there is a group of people we call disillusioned. They have lost their faith in politics and their respect for democracy, and they hate politicians, they hate politics, and they regard themselves as losers of the societal development, partly for good reasons, since they cannot be called winners of globalization. They have no jobs. They have very, very hard times to get somewhere to live, to stay, and they have a low education and so on. But most of all, what we see is that they are not interested in politics, and they don't participate. If not there, as was the case in Sweden, a populist party all of a sudden entered the scene and said, hey, we represent guys like you.
Yes.
Because we want to listen to the real people.
We are the losers.
Exactly.
We can work together.
We are the losers. We will transfer the losers to winners in elections, at least. And in contrast to other parties, they claim we will listen to guys like you. It's very interesting. and partly also scaring, of course. And then we have a huge group called standbyers. They have no other than warm feelings for politics. They are the most knowledgeable, they are the most efficacious, and they are very similar with activists, but they don't take part right now. And why? Well, maybe, or partly, because they trust too much in the political institutions. And they think that politics is done in a way they could accept. Even if they won't love the politicians, they tolerate them.
It's interesting because you have a sort of analysis which is very more complex than is current in this domain. What can do the school about that? What is the important? What is the possibility? Real possibilities of change.
To me,
this situation.
To me, it has meant that I want to be more, how shall I say, more nuanced in my view on civic education, for instance, and in the role of schools. I think that the role of the schools and the role of civic education cannot be to train political activists. It's not fair because you have your free will and you couldn't be forced to act or so, and it's not the role of the school. But the role of the school is to, in some way, foster standbyers. People who are well informed, who are believing in themselves, and that they are trained in terms of skills, and they are ready to step in if they are needed. So the school can give them everything they need the day in which they want to step in and try to make a change.
And what is the formula for the school to do that? You are thinking more in the in-class, general and regular teaching and disciplines. You are thinking more in extra activities that are in other form of organization or participation during the school period. What is your experience about that? The strategies that the schools can do to change the situation?
I think the schools are very important, of course, in knowledge and training respectful ways to deal with controversies and conflicts and diversity. I mean, that's one of the main functions in fostering cohesion and so on, and developing a civic culture to learn people how to respectfully live their lives in peaceful relationship to others they haven't choose to live with, or whose opinions they may hate. So that's of course a basic thing. What we also have noticed and discovered is that the way the teachers act in the classrooms, in the schoolyard, also have an influence over the way in which the students think about the public institutions.
Why? Because the teacher is a sort of symbol?
Exactly. In the eyes of these young persons, the teachers represent the wider public institution. And for some of them, they are the first representatives they meet of these institutions, of course. So that the teachers, for instance, treat them in a fair way is important. Otherwise, they will decrease the trust in the big political institutions. We can see very, very clearly over the years, since we follow them longitudinally, the same individual over 7 years. So can we say exactly why, or we believe at least, that we can see such a relationship, that there is a mechanism evolving here, that the more unfair treated you are, or feel that you are, the less you can trust also the wider public institution. And another way the teacher plays a key role is the way they talk about politics. If they talk about it in a positive, exciting, informative, supporting, guiding way, can mean that the political interest is growing very, very fast, in contrast to whether they talk in another way, which
or
can
don't talk at all.
Ignoring. And especially for those kids coming from less privileged home, the school can really make a difference here, and the teachers can be a mentor and a coach into a world of fairness, of a right to have a voice, being listened to, they haven't dreamt about when they were at their homes and more authoritarian families and so on. So in many, many ways, the classroom and the teachers can make a difference. What we also see in a huge intervention study we have just finalized in 5 European countries is that a special project driven and owned by the students themselves into a social issue can also make change, make them more informed, more engaged in a way, and also trained to value various conflicting sources when they are seeking information, as well as understanding different ways of valuing, for instance, the migrant issue and the refugee politics and the environmental problem. So within the frame of a subject, within the curriculum, a teacher can make change by letting them, by guiding, supporting, facilitating more deeper social study, for instance.
In general, you see isolated teachers that can do this change, or are more communities of teachers and schools that are oriented in one direction or others?
I can't be quite sure, but of course there must be a rector, a principal, allowing teachers to have these more experimental or interventional activities going around. So there must be a friendly school climate for letting civic education improve their methods, of course. That's what we in particular have become aware of.
Well, thank you, Rikana, for this interview. At the end of the interview, all the time we ask one question for our guests. That is, what can be your advice for our education, our Chilean education? You can say one advice for us to improve the quality of education. What can be your opinion or suggestion?
When I looked at the figures of how wealth and so is distributed over the country, I noticed what you are fully aware of, that there are wide discrepancies. It's a huge inequality in the Chilean society. The worst within the OECD group of countries, of course. So to me, one solution, one way to go forward and to decrease the unfair, unjust distribution of wealth is, of course, to secure that you have an equally good education to all, and that you let every single young person have the best possible access to the best education.
Thank you. Bueno, y aquí estamos terminando otro capítulo de la entrevista educativa. Los invitamos a ver en el portal Educar Chile a los más de 30 entrevistas que tenemos y en las cuales tenemos otros entrevistados y entrevistadas que también, como el profesor Erik Amnå, nos hablan de distintos temas de la educación en el mundo de hoy.